Erin is definitely questioning why she drinks alcohol. Also.
It has nothing to do with the alcohol. I think it has something to do with the screaming. All right, Andrea, Jaclyn, please introduce yourselves, and we'll get into it.
So my name's Jaclyn Casavant, and I am can you all hear me, by the way? Yes? Okay. I'm the senior brand manager on the Aleve business for Bayer.
And I'm Andrea Fischer, and I lead the media strategy, all the paid media strategy for the pain cardio business at Bayer, including Aleve.
So we're going to talk about two campaigns today. One, the Painful Truth, and then the other is the National Arthritis Foundation. So I think we have a couple videos to kind of set the stage of what we're talking about. But while we get those teed up, let's talk about Painful Truth. So can you set a little bit of background about what led to this campaign in particular?
Yeah, and I apologize. It's early on a Wednesday, and we're going to kind of get into a heavy topic. So let me give you some context about the world that we operate in back at Bayer. Our corporate mission is health for all, hunger for none, and it's something that we take very seriously at all levels at the organization. So anytime there's an opportunity to increase access, healthcare access for consumers, or educate on self-care, we always want to try and lean in there. So this kind of all started, I want to say, back in 23. So what was going on back then was awareness of the opioid crisis in the United States was kind of at a high point. You know, if you think about Hollywood putting out a lot of programs like Dope Sick, painkillers, things of that nature, the Sackler settlement just had occurred. So this is really top of mind and in the news and in conversation, and yet prescriptions were still high, even though they've been coming down. They were still elevated, especially when you looked at the rest of the world. And I think there was even a stat that came out around that time, about 42% of Americans know someone, has lost someone to overdose. And yet there's still stigma, taboo, like this couldn't happen to me, this is someone else's problem. So enter Aleve and Bayer. We have a clinical that we ran that demonstrated that Aleve, or naproxen, which is the molecule in Aleve, was as efficacious in hours 0 through 4 versus a hydrocodone acetaminophen combination. So for those of you not in healthcare, a brand that might contextualize that for you, it's an opioid like Vicodin. And so we were shown to be in the Stental study as efficacious, and then by nature of our molecule, it lasted longer because Aleve, for those of you that know, and I think maybe it was mentioned during the rap battle between Advil and Aleve last night, we're both NSAIDs, our half-life though enables us to last longer in one dose. So we had this data, and we had it for a few years, and we just didn't know how do you touch this topic about opioids? How can you drive awareness that there are other options? The CDC will tell you to maximize non-opioid options for acute pain where you can. There's always a role for opioids depending on the condition, but there is a role to drive awareness and education with consumers to ask that question, have a conversation with their doctor. So we kind of punted this big, meaty question over to our poor AOR, Mullen Lowe, who are fantastic, but it's a big one. And that's how the Painful Truth was born. We're going to show you the video. That was kind of at the heart of it, but it was surrounded by an ecosystem. Obviously, for a campaign like this, we leaned much more into the PSA, earned media approach in the press, and then there was also an HCP, or healthcare professional approach. We've been using this data with doctors for some time, but doctors are consumers too, and sometimes they get inundated with so much data about clinicals, you need to tell a story to help break through. And so that's kind of how this came to be, so I'll play it and then we can talk more.
Are you there? My audio is a little low. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, Christina. My name's Matt Robinson. How are you?
Good. How are you, Matt?
Hi, Crystal. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
I could relate to that in your story.
Story about recovery like that. Can you tell me a little bit about the source of your pain?
So the costochondritis, I woke up and I just had a really tight pain in my chest.
I was in an accident where I broke my ankle.
My bones were apparently growing too fast for my muscles to keep up with.
You know, I tried patches and goops and lotions and meds and everything, and it still hurts.
Have opioids ever been a consideration? Have you ever thought about prescription pain relief?
I'll tell you, when you're in back pain,
It could be a consideration. I mean, if you can get rid of this pain.
You know, when I left the hospital, they gave me a prescription.
you'll try what you can try to see what you can do.
Yeah, so we're talking about opioids and treating pain. Side effects are certainly something to consider.
Right.
Common ones that people may experience would be like nausea, vomiting, hypotension, which is lowered blood pressure.
Gotcha.
You may experience some extra perspiration as the body
Burying the lead over here, guys. I'm so sorry.
sort of changes temperatures up and down. You might also find yourself looking forward to your next dose. It's a very effective painkiller. Another side effect is you could notice that your behavior changes a bit. You could find yourself lying about everything that you do, and everywhere you are, and everywhere that your money is going. You might find yourself going through the medicine cabinets of friends or family, or rifling through people's purses.
That's a scary thought. That's a scary thought.
You might find yourself in your backyard swinging as hard as you can at a fence to break your hand so you can go to the hospital or the ER and get a couple of pills.
Wow.
You might find yourself on Christmas morning with your 9-month-old daughter in the back of your truck, pulling up to a drug house, leaving her in it while the truck is running to go upstairs and get just enough pills to get you through the day.
Oh my gosh.
Christina, that was me.
Oh, really?
Everything I've just told you was my life. These are things that I've done. Yes, I'm an expert in opioids because I was an addict once, and it almost destroyed my life.
Sorry, I'm getting emotional.
I know what you're thinking. It won't happen to you, right?
That was a really hard campaign to put together, but you guys told an important story about how Aleve can help navigate that, right? There's an educational aspect that you took through it. I feel a little weird going right till National Arthritis Foundation after that campaign, but you took a similar approach to really educate people beyond just, you have this pain, take a drug, right? Yeah. Where did you go with that for the National Arthritis Foundation, and how are you using that to also educate younger generations about what arthritis is?
Yeah, and by the way, I've seen that video about 100 times at this point, and I just got emotional watching it. So again, sorry for the heavy content on a Wednesday morning, but it's very important to get that message out there. But knowing how heavy and serious that was, and I think Jaclyn mentioned a lot of the HCP messaging and the importance of the organic and earned approach that we took there, we kind of wanted to take it to the next level, not from an opioid perspective, but from the broader pain relief that Aleve can provide. So we had this insight. Over 90 million Americans in the US experience some type of joint pain or arthritis. Many people don't know that joint pain and arthritis are very closely linked. In fact, they're interchangeably used many of the time. But there's a stigma around arthritis, right? It's like you think, oh, my grandmother has arthritis. I don't have arthritis. I'm not old enough for that. By the way, if I sleep wrong one night and I have back pain for the full week now.
Like last night?
Like last night. That is joint pain. My back hurts, my knee hurts, my wrist hurts, my neck hurts because I slept with the wrong pillow. That's all joint pain, and so many Americans suffer from it. So we had that amazing insight, and our great creative agency put together a beautiful creative campaign for us. But what we wanted to do was sort of bring it to the next level and have this launch moment around Arthritis Awareness Month. We had an IAT meeting with all of some of our partners in the room, and it was a little lackluster. We left the meeting, and I could tell that Jaclyn was a little frustrated. So I walked over to her desk, and I was like, what's going on? Why are you frustrated? And she was like, this is just, it's bigger than this. It needs to be bigger than this. So we're like, all right. I was like, all right, let's get in a room. We brought the right people in the room. We brought our comms team in. We sat, we talked through it. We brainstormed, how can we make this feel bigger? So we already had this partnership with the Arthritis Foundation. So we talked to them, and we then brainstormed on a couple of partners that we wanted to work with. And we thought about morning shows, the Today Show, Good Morning America, and the incredible talent and doctors that they have on their show all the time. And that's kind of how it was born. We brought our comms team in and we just talked about how can we just make this feel big. So it was a very fast-paced process, but what ended up happening was we ended up running a special on Good Morning America. We brought in a fitness specialist who very firmly and highly believes in NSAIDs like Aleve, and he recommends it to his clients. And the Arthritis Foundation, and they brought in their credibility and their stats and just the want and the need to educate people about joint pain, and that it's okay if you're 40 and your back hurts, but we have something to sort of help with that. It's okay if it's arthritis or joint pain, whatever you want to call it, but there are ways that you can alleviate that pain with NSAIDs like Aleve, but also through movement and eating healthy and staying active. So I think the segment kind of speaks for itself, but we can play that and give Erin a chance to rest her voice.
You guys are doing great with just one question.
We are back with National Arthritis Awareness Month. More than 90 million adults in the U.S. either have arthritis or joint symptoms consistent with arthritis. This segment is sponsored by Aleve, and the company's spokesperson, personal trainer Rick Ritchie, is here, along with their CEO of the Arthritis Foundation, Steve Taylor. So happy to have you both.
Good morning.
We will get to some exercises because I know you're a personal trainer, but let's do this first.
Sure.
Steve, tell me, tens of millions of people deal with arthritis, but it doesn't just have to be of one age.
Exactly. So 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. have a form of arthritis, and there's over 100 forms of arthritis, and it's not just your grandmother's arthritis.
Right.
It affects all ages. And so the Arthritis Foundation is here for their journey, no matter where they are in their diagnosis, either the beginning of diagnosis or they've had the disease 10 years and need to have resources or tools to deal with their pain and the symptoms of their arthritis. So the Arthritis Foundation is there for them.
I was going to say, I'm sure it's endless what your foundation does. What else do they provide for people with arthritis?
So the Arthritis Foundation was founded 75 years ago with the patient as the center of our organization. And our mission is twofold: Pathway to a Cure, which talks about treatments and scientific advancements to make sure we're unlocking the mystery of the various forms of arthritis. And then Pathway to Improved Quality of Life, which is why we're here today with Aleve, to talk about movement and how we can get patients living the life that they want to live, being able to say yes to more things and no to less things, and be able to overcome their disease as best as they can. And so the Arthritis Foundation has tools and resources for them for that.
Thank you. Now, Rick, I know you've got a very helpful acronym that can help us to learn what to do if you suffer with arthritis.
Yeah, it's a fun, quick, easy to remember thing for people with arthritis or joint pain. It is MEATS, M-E-A-T-S. So the M is for movement, your activities of daily living. Keep doing what
In an
you're
effort
doing.
of time, let's
E
pause.
for exercise.
All right, so we both took two educational approaches to really tell the Aleve story, and you guys partnered with many people in both of these campaigns, from the Mothers Against Drug Abuse to the National Arthritis Foundation to Good Morning America. When you're starting these cross-brand partnerships, like, what are the first things that you do?
Yeah, so I mean, it all starts with, you got to be really clear on your who. Who are we talking to? What is it we want to say? And then how can a partner help us achieve that, whatever our goal is? And so in both cases, Arthritis Foundation was about credentialing too. They were also about a reach for us and getting the attention of folks who knew they had arthritis, had the doctor diagnosis. On the flip side, Mothers Against Prescription Drug Abuse, MAPDA, in some ways kind of did something similar, but on a different scale. So they're very grassroots. I mean, there's only a handful of people that really run that organization. They do a lot of great policy work on the Hill. Mary Bono, former Congresswoman, is their CEO. And so having her as a partner helped with getting pickup in the press and broadening the reach, even though we didn't have the same budget we had for the GMA Arthritis Foundation partnership. But what was very unique about MAPDA was they actually helped us create the content and educated us internally at Bayer. It could have been very easy to screw that up on such a sensitive topic. And we had conversations around the use of words like addict and addiction versus saying things like substance use disorder. How do you not propagate or perpetuate a stigma when you're trying to humanize this? So you really have to get clear on what is the role of this partner. Is it breakthrough? Is it reach? Is it credentialing it? Is it making sure we get it right internally? And once you have that laid out, you can kind of figure out who would be best to come on board.
Now, did you guys go into these campaigns with just impressions and reach, or what KPIs were you trying to track to say, hey, this was a success beyond the moving content or the education piece?
Yeah, no, it was many different things, and especially for the GMA, unique reach was a big one, just getting our message out. But engagement and shares and organic, like earned media, was really important. So I think net of it surpassed all of the metrics for success that we had in terms of reach and engagement and things like that.
You know, most people think about cross-brand partnerships and it's like, what's the biggest one I can find? But like, when is going smaller okay? Like, where are these micro influencers or partnerships that you can start exploring?
Again, I think, it goes back to your objective. And I think, there's, random aside, there's some research out there for those of you who are familiar with the Aaron Bass Institute who talks about partnerships and where you might go off the rails. And sometimes if you're just going after the shiniest thing, your brand can get lost. So you really need to be smart about, again, who's the audience? I think they showed data that said if you have more of an overlap of audiences, you'll actually get the attention of both, versus if it's like, hey, they have a new audience, let me try to get in there. The people who already know that one brand may not even see you. So if you're going to do something like that, make sure you're putting all your distinctive assets and things like that. So I'd encourage you to go out and kind of look through some of the principles and things they found. I think they actually, I don't know if Jason's still here, but I think they used the Barbie movie as an example of where there were some great partnerships. You just, again, keep the objective in mind, and depending on the partner, make sure you give yourself the best chance for your brand to break through.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think the authenticity is really important. So, and I think, again, the Painful Truth was a little bit of a smaller campaign, and by design, that's a very polarizing topic, and some people, many people are affected by that in different ways, right? And some people have a positive pull to it, and some people are like, that is too personal for me, I need to stay away from it. We actually had some people in the company who opted to not work on that campaign because it was too personal for them. So something like that's polarizing. It's really hard to make that a big, shiny thing because of just the reaction to it, the innate reaction to it, but it's such an important thing. So if done properly, maybe bigger isn't better. Yeah. But for something broader, like 90 million people in the US that are affected by joint pain and arthritis, and because of how authentic that was, and the fact that all of the partners involved, from GMA to the Arthritis Foundation to the personal trainer that we chose to Aleve, all benefited from that partnership. Like, it really was a true, everybody got something out of that, and it made sense for all the partners. It did not feel forced.
Gosh, it's like when we try to do, it's interesting, we try to do one thing internally, right? And it feels like it's so hard to get anything done when you're just working with Aleve or one brand. And now you've introduced other brands into the mix, other objectives, other priorities. How do you manage through those complexities? And how do you all align on a common goal when you go into these with different KPIs?
I think it goes back to, again, knowing what your objective is, who you're talking to, making sure you scope that in up front. And certainly if you're the one going out seeking the partners, that you come in with that context. So I think that's one thing. The other thing too is, and I think we were very good about this, knowing what your non-negotiables are. Yeah. So I'll give the example from GMA. Good Morning America said you could only have one spokesperson. But we're like, okay, well, we need to say the Aleve claims, but the Arthritis Foundation couldn't do that. They have partnerships with other analgesic brands too, but we wanted their credentialing in that audience. So we actually had to go in and negotiate with GMA and say, we need two people. If we're going to do this, we need two people. So knowing what are the things you must do and where are the things that you can give up if it's in the interest of a partner, that's also helpful having.
Yeah. And listen, there were a lot of cooks in that kitchen for GMA. I think we had a benefit. Our media is in-house, so we still have, we still have the Creative and Arthritis Foundation and their legal team, plus our legal team, plus our brand team. And it was a lot. We actually, one of the people on the Aleve brand team, I was trying to message him on Teams probably a couple months ago, and he's like, sorry, I had this chat muted from when we had the GMA partnership because
so much back and forth.
Still in PTSD.
Yeah, basically. He's like, it was muted, and I laughed because the amount of daily emails and messages that it required to get that off the ground was enormous, but we just always had to have the right people in the room working through it. So I think that's really important.
It feels like everyone is going through some level of partnership, right? It's like there's someone's endorsing something else. There's celebrities all over the place and advertisements. It's almost ubiquitous. Have we hit a tipping point?
Everything's dead. Partnerships are dead. TV's dead.
Print is dead.
We love to say that. No, I just think it goes back to, like I said, the study that's out there and the research. We got to get smarter about how we do it. So yeah, if you just want to slap a Aleve logo on somewhere, I'm not sure that's going to give us a benefit or even, the sponsor gets the money. So I think if there's a win-win situation where all partners get a benefit in some way, and again, going back to your objectives, your who, and what do you want to say to them, I think there's a way to thread the needle and have a good activation partnership.
Any questions?
Questions?
Ooh. Knew I could count on you.
I can always count on you.
He's going first. For once, just for once. Let's know who you are.
Okay, sure. So I'm Michael Baker. I'm with Look Media. We're an out-of-home advertising company. So I was watching the GMA segment, and I was thinking, okay, like Aleve is sponsoring this. I get why they want to be associated with that message. It makes a lot of sense. It's informative. It's good for consumers. There's part of my brain that also went, well, is it Tylenol or aspirin or Aleve or what do I actually need? And I would trust my doctor, and I know it's a sponsorship. And so my question is that we have a new administration, and Bobby Kennedy says he's going to take science and put it in front and get advertising away from drugs. So how do you guys address that or think about it or talk about it inside? Because it seems like it's going to be a thing.
Thanks for that softball.
Sorry. But you have to think about it, so it's a risk, maybe.
I blame John for making you go first.
Yeah. I think it's an unknown for all of us right now, right? We're going to have to figure out what's just talk and what actually actualizes. But I think, since COVID, I think all healthcare companies, there's a skepticism there that maybe wasn't in the past. But I think we cover ourselves on all bases. So that activation was surrounded by a lot of other materials. And then one thing that a lot of healthcare companies do, ourselves included, is we have relationships with doctors. And actually the Painful Truth campaign had a much bigger HCP spend, healthcare professional. So we're always making sure they have the data and the resources so that they can give the best recommendations to patients when they come in. So talking to your doctor is always something that we try to make sure people know to go and do, and we're there when they're doing that.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the other thing I want to say is we actually wanted to bring a doctor on to GMA, and GMA told us no, which I have to really respect from a journalistic perspective, but for that actually exact reason, because they didn't want even though from a medical perspective it was a medical professional saying, I recommend that you take an NSAID for inflammation and joint pain, and they wouldn't have mentioned Aleve specifically, they would have just said an NSAID, like our personal trainer did. But GMA said, for journalistic integrity, we can't have a doctor go on this program and tell people to take Aleve. Which we had to respect, and we pivoted and we were like, okay, that's fine. We're going to get a personal trainer, and we have the Arthritis Foundation to talk to the benefits, because at the end of the day, we always go back to the health for all, hunger for none, and the education piece of it. So, and the authenticity, that's really what we wanted. We're not driving Aleve down your throat. It was really for the awareness around the joint pain and arthritis. No, it was a great question.
Mine's hopefully a little bit less, more of a softball, actually. Can you just talk more about how you manage the relationship with legal? Because in my experience,
guys, happy content.
A lot of the time, the message,
nice softball.
The message will get lost because you have to work within confinements.
Yes. So Yes, I think we call them LMR, Legal Medical Regulatory at Bayer. I think I have them on speed dial. Number one, it starts with building a relationship. So even before these things happen, we're very tight. I think in our pain cardio division, we probably have the best, I'm bragging, in the company. We're very close with them, and we socialize stuff early and often. So the minute the Agency for the Painful Truth came in and had kind of the tissue session on that, I brought those very half-assed materials into my LMR partners and said, let's talk through it. What are the guardrails? What do we need? And doesn't mean it wasn't really difficult conversations, which I shared with you, made that probably one of the most difficult things I worked with, because we were talking to people like Matt, who had these experiences in his life. And then I was having to go from that conversation and then talk legal, tactical, executional. It was very mentally like, oh. But no, it's just socializing early and often, keeping them close, and then also pushing on places. Is this an FDA-driven thing? Is this a Bayer being conservative thing? Where can we take risks so that consumers understand? Because sometimes what can end up happening is you have all the legal language, and then I think the FDA is trying to protect consumers, as they should be, and sometimes the simplicity gets lost and we just confuse everyone. So it's kind of a fine line trying to figure out where those points are that you can push.
And by the way, pushing back on legal in some instances, because a lot of times they'll say, no, you can't say that, and we're like, crap. But instead, going back to them and saying, okay, but what can we say instead of that? Because that's the message we're trying to get across. So if we can't say that word for word, legal team, help us. And they're like, well, we're not copywriters. I'm like, I don't need you to be a copywriter. Tell me legally. By the way, I'm not allowed in the legal conversations. Can you imagine why? I let Jaclyn handle that.
Your job, though, to then make it authentic, like in the wording, or work with your
Yes.
afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll take and so actually we were talking about this someone earlier today. We were talking with you. Historically, because you've worked with Bayer in the past, we didn't let agency partners in on some of those conversations. Now we have the right people in the room, so the agency hears the feedback, they understand the context of the conversation, and then we'll go back outside of the LMR meeting and we'll work with agency partners who have much more clever people to try to say, okay, what are the different ways we can approach this?
Jaclyn, Andrea, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
So much.
Thanks, guys.